So you should get your prompt about that. And I have, though you can't see it, but here I can show you. I've plugged in my my computer, so we won't have any mishaps like, hey Kyle, any mishaps like last week. I should say knock on wood, right? Famous last words, because there's always something else that can go wrong with Zoom, I think. But okay, so let's see. Well, we still have another minute by my watch, and we are slowly. Jinyi, excellent. How are you? Welcome, Rebecca. Right on time. Good. Good. So we just have to be patient, I guess, and wait a few minutes. I'm actually going to end class a few minutes early, more like 10 or 15 minutes early today, because I have a meeting that is immutable and cannot be changed and could not be changed, and that my attendance is required at. So I'm going to miss the first 15 minutes of that and cut our lesson today 15 minutes short, but I don't think anyone will suffer drastically from it. Julia, you're with us. Good. Greetings. I even see a few faces. Excellent. Grace now and Marcia. Wonderful. All right. Well, we're getting close to full speed. Isabel is with us now. Excellent. So okay. So we have 10 of you. That's 10 out of 15. Yeah. And Jackie has just joined us. So yeah, we definitely have a majority enough to to move ahead. For those of you who just came in late, I was just saying that we will end a few minutes early because I have a meeting that I can't do anything about, that I absolutely have to be at. So you will, if you feel shortchanged by having 15 minutes fewer of historical linguistics this week, we can make up for it somehow. I've enjoyed meeting with you. Speaking of making it up, I've had very nice 15-minute meetings with most of you, and I'm looking forward to a few more the end of this week on Thursday and Friday. If you haven't signed up, I think there are a couple of you who maybe haven't. Please let me know what would work for you on Thursday or Friday, preferably Thursday for me, but I could do Friday as well. So I wanted to mention also that I know I've been giving you a lot of homework assignments, but it's my belief that you can learn how to do the comparative method by actually doing it rather than just having me tell you about it. So that's why I give you these assignments. I've tried to, like with the Gabe one, I broke it up into 2 pieces, so neither piece would be too onerous. I'm doing the same thing with another homework that is assigned for today, due on Wednesday. For it has to do with English and German, so maybe it'll be a little bit more familiar than the Gabe stuff was, or the Polynesian was. But between now and Wednesday, all you have to do is look at 14 words and state what the correspondences are involving particular sounds. Anything that involves a fricative in German, you find the corresponding element in English, and that's all you have to do between now and Wednesday. The second part will be to take those correspondences Wednesday through the weekend and do the kind of analysis that we've been doing on them. But between now and Wednesday, it really should not take you more than 20 minutes to just sort of say, oh yeah, there are 14 words. That's less than a minute per word. If you do just a minute per word, then you'll have a little bit of time left over to write down your answers. But you just say, oh, is there a fricative in the German? Yes. What is the corresponding element in English, and so forth. So just state the correspondences and state the environment for them. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm doing this and then breaking it up into pieces so you can get a sense of how you attack these kinds of problems. And then what we go through in class is a way of sort of explicating more deeply and trying to understand why we do what we do. Okay, so please pay attention to that. I posted it, I guess, yesterday. So it's listed in the syllabus. It's listed under the assignments. Any questions about anything there? No, okay. I have something else. This is a historic week, I think you all know, for various reasons in Washington, with an impeachment trial coming up starting tomorrow. And I want to share something with you about that. It's not intended to be a political statement or to rile the political waters in any way. Simply to show you, it's something that I think you've begun to see, that I'm interested in real world parallels to what we do in our historical linguistics classes. That's why I brought in, for instance, the first day, that column by Kathleen Parker, because she's just an ordinary person. She was writing something that's relevant to what we do in linguistics. The video clip about etymologizing was another one like that. But interestingly, there is something that struck me as I was reading over the weekend that's relevant pertains to the impeachment trial, but is relevant to what we have been talking about. So let me share my screen for a moment. And get rid of this. And this, and here we are. So this was an article, this is from an article that was about this question of whether it's actually constitutional or not for there to be an impeachment trial starting tomorrow. And I want to draw your attention to this, what is said in this article to be the strong historical argument supporting the impeachment of former officials. That's what the constitutional issue seems to hinge on. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe writes in an op-ed piece responding to Luttig was a judge who said that it is unconstitutional to have such a proceeding starting tomorrow. And what Tribe writes is this: the American impeachment power, he says, quote, derives from the power of the British Parliament. And he said the British Parliament had the power to impeach former officials. So what I want you to think about, how is that reasoning relevant to what we've talked about in class? Especially think of our discussion about etymology and the etymology of etymology, and the issue that Kathleen Parker had with regard to no problem as a way of responding when someone says thank you. Does anyone see what the connection is? Does anyone see what Tribe is doing here, and want to offer a critique? Or am I just way off base here? Anyone?
Well, Tribe is citing what I guess the impeachment thing is based on from maybe a couple hundred years ago. I don't know if he's talking about like what our government was like founded on, or the current British Parliament.
I think he means that at the time that the founding fathers put together the statement in the Constitution about, you're on exactly the right track. This is exactly what the kind of answer I wanted. So do you want to elaborate further? Because he is talking about this.
He's saying that the impeachment power comes from what our Constitution and stuff was based on a couple hundred years ago. And that's kind of like what Kathleen Parker was saying about how no problem originated, I guess, before it became a idiomatic phrase.
Exactly. So in a sense, Tribe is saying its history determines its current meaning. He's not even saying the form that it in at least in this statement that it derives from the power of the British Parliament, he's not saying that this is what it meant to the founding fathers at the time they wrote the Constitution. He's saying that historically, what their statements are based on has had a particular value, and his argumentation then is therefore that value should not, has not changed. And that to me is a lot like exactly as you say, the sort of etymological argument that that etymology is destiny, we might say, that once you understand what the etymology is, that's it. It doesn't go any further. So I think he's using the same kind of reasoning. Now I respect Tribe a lot. I think he's a pretty bright guy, and he's very distinguished in legal circles. But I think that this argument is not as it's not as strong a historical argument as it's made out to be here, because it is falling into what I would call the etymological fallacy, the fact that that etymology is not destiny. Things can change. And in fact, that's, I think, one of the issues with the interpreting the Constitution in general. Does the original meaning in 1787, does that carry forward into the 21st century, or is it an elastic document that changes as the larger context changes? I don't want to debate that larger issue. It's very interesting. That's more for like a political science class than a linguistics class. But the nature of this argument, I wanted to draw it to your attention because it's exactly, I think, the same kind of reasoning that we've run into in our in some of our considerations of etymology. Okay. Anyone have any further reactions? Thank you, Julia. That was exactly the answer I was looking for. No? Okay. All right. So as I say, I look for these real world parallels to what we do in this class, because I think it helps to reinforce the whole kind of enterprise that we're engaged in. I want to show you also, of course, my my t-shirt du jour, as I sometimes say redundantly, my daily t-shirt du jour. Let me find the picture of it, and let me first show you the real thing. Here it is. Can you see that emblazoned on my shirt? It says, and I'll show you the picture. Here we go. It says, "So good it HZ." Anyone know what HZ stands for? So good at HZ. Anyone?
Hertz.
Yes, it means hurts. Now, what is hurts? So, and it's a joke, of course. So good it hurts, but what is hurts? Someone? Do I see a hand up there? Or someone? Anyone? Have you run into this term at all in any of your classes?
It's a unit of frequency, specifically in sound.
Exactly. It's a unit of frequency. It's used to measure, quote, any phenomenon with regular periodic variations. It's used in talking about sound waves because they have regular periodic variations. It's also used with electromagnetic waves and other waves and such. So it's relevant for the expression of the physical properties of phonetic elements in language, of sounds. And so it's a bit of a joke. So good it hurts. But so why is this my t-shirt du jour? Let's find. And in particular, why does phonetics matter for us? That's really the question, and that's why I bothered wearing this shirt today and bugging you about this. Anyone? Why is phonetics relevant to what we do, or what we have been doing? More to the point. No thoughts? Is it irrelevant?
Sound change?
Yeah, Austin, please go for it.
Oh, yeah, it plays a big role in sound change.
Yeah, boy, does it ever play a big role in sound change. Yeah, exactly. Now, we haven't been stressing that too much, but we'll ultimately see that it matters in at least two ways with respect to sound change. When we were doing this Gabay problem, and in our discussion of it, especially when we got to the point of worrying about the third set that we looked at on Wednesday, we were really forced to seriously consider the phonetic properties of our reconstructions. And what I said several times, and I really want to emphasize this, is that our particular reconstructions commit us to a claim about a path of development from the proto-language to the attested languages. And moreover, when we talk about the environments in which the sounds occur, that was part of what the methodology is. Then we also have to we'll see this more clearly with some other examples today, but that also is it means that if we pay attention to the phonetic environment, then we're really talking about the physical properties of, the physical properties of the sounds that, I'm sorry, excuse me just a sec. The physical properties of the sounds that could lead to changes in the realization of the sounds, not just a single sound, but the environment as well, the sounds next to it, around it, close to it, and so forth. So yeah, so as far as we're concerned, phonetics matters a lot for us. Phonetics matters for the for dealing with sound change, and we'll try to develop a very clear notion of just how it is relevant, just how it pertains to our enterprise today. Okay, it seems like every class we come back to this this diagram, but what I have in mind here for this diagram is that whatever we posit for the proto-language, that really gives us a starting point and a path of development to whatever sound we are dealing with in the later language, in the later form that language takes. So that means our reconstructions have to be phonetically plausible. They have to allow us, that should be us. They have to allow us to get from there to here, so to speak, there being the proto-language, here being the attested languages. So we have to get from there, the proto-form, to here, the attested language. And because we're dealing with sounds, we want that starting point and that path of development to be phonetically plausible. Now we'll see that there are some constraints that we have to keep in mind, but I think just thinking about common sense, you have to, thinking about it from a common sense point of view, whatever you start with is going to give you a basis for where you can end up. And for that reason, we want our reconstructions to be phonetically plausible. We want them to be able to allow us to have a reasonable path of development from the proto-language to the attested languages. So when we dealt with the third set last Wednesday from the Gabe languages, the set that was involved a T corresponding to T, corresponding to T, corresponding to S, corresponding to S across the 5 languages, we ultimately decided that we wanted to that we remember a different principle, regularity of sound change, told us we couldn't reconstruct T, we couldn't reconstruct S. And we came up with the ts, the T, or the dental affricate ts, T with a sibilant, an S-like sibilant release as our reconstruction. How did that fall in line with, how is that consistent with a criterion that focuses on phonetic plausibility for a starting point and for the path of development? Some of you wrote reasonable answers in that regard, so I know that some of you know what to say, but would someone like to just verbalize that for the class? How does this reconstruction of affricate, dental affricate, how is it consistent with, how does it fall in line with what we've been just talking about regarding phonetic plausibility? Anyone? I know you know it. I know all of you know it at some level, and I know some of you wrote very elegant statements about that. Someone like to take a stab at it?
It can realistically give either a T or an S because it contains both.
Okay, who's this, Kyle?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it contains both, right? So could you just be a little bit more precise about how it contains both?
So the affricate contains both the sound t and the sound s, just simultaneously, ts.
Right.
So it can be broken
it,
down to either t or s.
right. So the movement from a ts starts out like a stop and ends up like a sibilant. That's the description of an affricate. It has a stop like onset starting point and a sibilant release. Ts. There's a t stop like portion and a sibilant release portion. So in that sense, it has both T-like properties, the stoppage at the onset, and S-like properties, the sibilant release. So it actually is a very good choice here in terms of phonetic plausibility. It's not much of a leap really to go from ts to t only, or from ts to s only. And in fact, there are some languages where the stop part is relatively short, so that we could actually schematize it like that, and some where the stop part is long and the sibilant release is very short, so that would be more like that. This is not, the IPA only recognizes this, but there are languages, the difference between if I remember right, Greek and Romanian is that Romanian has more this kind of very brief stoppage and longer sibilant release, whereas Greek has a ts-like sound that is longer as far as the stop is concerned and shorter sibilant release. There are some languages as well where the which are sort of equal in terms of the duration of the what am I doing here? There we go. That are sort of equal in terms of the duration, and the IPA symbol that that uses a. Let me blow this up a bit. This is not a dental. This is a alveopalatal, but this little thing at the top that is referred to as a there as the tie bar. I don't know if there's there might be a hyphen in there or not. Is used in the IPA symbolization, and that seems to suggest that the stop part and the fricative sibilant part are sort of equal in terms of duration. So and there are even, just to make it a little more complicated, there are even languages in which there are T or ts-like sounds that are really best treated as clusters of two separate sounds. There's some dialects of Greek that actually distinguish between this kind of TS sequence and this kind. Difference between this means sit down, katse, and matse, with just a sort of more equal duration to the T and the S. This means he sweetened, I think. I can't remember the exact gloss. It's a dialect word. So sit. So affricates are fairly complicated and complex overall, but they all involve some stoppage and some sibilant release of some sort. So it's actually reasonably plausible to go from this kind of, or this kind of, or even this kind of affricate to something that is wholly a stop or wholly a fricative. So this is, so our ts reconstruction falls in line with the phonetic plausibility criterion. So that makes it a good choice. So we can now add to our toolkit, if you will, for trying to understand how we arrive at good solutions to these kinds of problems. We've already talked about regularity of sound change, that it obliges us to look at the environments and to see if there's overlap in the environments. Then we know we have to follow we have to reconstruct something different for the two sets that overlap, and that's what led us to say that this had to be different. This set had to be whatever we reconstruct. Remember, we said it couldn't be a T or it couldn't be an S. What was the reason for that? Just so we're all on the same page. Can't be T nor S. And why was that? Anyone remember the reasoning?
We've already reconstructed them previously, and they occur in the same phonetic environments.
Right.
Like we have
Exactly.
an example.
Exactly. We had already reconstructed them, and they occur in exactly the same environments. So if we wanted to for some reason, if we really insisted on this being T, then we would have to change our reconstruction for the set that we derive, or for the sound that we used for numbers 1 through 5. So this one is not going to work. So it can't be T, it can't be S, and that's what led us to the ts. But the ts also works well if we adhere to our further principle of that we've just been developing here of phonetic plausibility for our reconstructions. And then maybe I'll put this at the end as a kind of last resort, but something that is certainly going to be relevant is Occam's razor. So and there may be other principles as well that will that we can use, but for the moment, these are the three that we've developed. We started with Occam's razor. We augmented that with the notion of regularity of sound change. And now today we've been focusing more on phonetic plausibility. We sort of snuck phonetic plausibility in there secretly, sort of a crypto move or something like that. But now we're just being more overt about it. I don't know what that's doing there. Okay, any questions about this? Well, let's sort of press on further with this by looking at the two groups that you were to look at for today. This is 10 through 13 and 14 through 17. But before we do that, let's just see. Yeah, let me. There was a bit of confusion, I guess, in some of your answers about just what it means to talk about regularity of sound change. So I just let me just give you this representation of what I mean here. We talked about regularity of sound change as basically the same sound in the same environment will develop in the same way. So that if for any given language, we have to qualify it that way. And there is in fact I don't have it here, but let me find it just a moment. There was a sheet that I put on Carmen that I haven't really had much occasion to talk about yet. I'm not going to waste much more time. It's not the basic issues, but there was another one which I which I can't find right now. It gives a good definition of regularity of sound change. I could type it up, but basic issues. I keep coming back to that one. I should have pulled it out beforehand. Key notions. There it is. Now I don't know. I did ask at one point early in the semester for you to look at this, and maybe this is a good time to think of it or to go back to it. It recapitulates some of the things that we've been talking about, having to do with evidence of change, for instance. But there's one piece in particular that I want you to pay attention to here, and this is the definition that we give for regular sound change. Sound change, and this is associated with linguists in the European linguists, mainly from the German-speaking world in the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century, who came to be known as the neo-grammarians. But they by looking at the sound changes that became evident in their analysis of the relationships among the Indo-European languages, they came up with this view that of sound change as regular. So, and this is how this is the way in which it's intended here. Sound change is regular in the sense that all candidate forms for a particular change. So if you have a language with, say, 50 instances of a T occurring between vowels, then all of those candidate forms, once you, for a particular change, once it's formulated appropriately, so as to be restricted to a particular environment. So if we're not talking about all T's, but only T's between vowels, let's say, and it's limited in space and time. That is, it's not a forever kind of thing. It doesn't persist for thousands and thousands of years. It exists in a speech community. That's the space at a particular stage in the historical development of that speech community. So once you have those conditions, sound change is regular. All candidate forms for a particular change, once it's formulated appropriately so as to be restricted to a particular environment, if the facts warranted, and limited in space and time, all candidate forms undergo the change. It's not a matter of, if you have 50 of them, if 49 undergo the change, you say that's regular? No, because one didn't. If it's not a matter of the majority, like 26 undergo the change, then you're okay. No, this is saying that all of the candidate forms for the change undergo that change. And that is a very powerful hypothesis. What we're using right now is, I'll come back to this business about the conditioning in a moment, but what we're doing here is saying that the sound in the language in question, or the speech community in question, has there's a particular sound in a particular environment, and it undergoes a change. And it's not just this, it's not just a matter of one word undergoing the change, but every candidate form, every time you get this X in the environment of between A and between C, if there's a sound change that affects that sound in that environment, it will affect all instances of that. That's what regularity of sound change means. So all X's in this environment become X prime. What you do not find is XAC. Let me write it. So this is, sorry. This means that there's a sequence of sounds. Oops. Sequence of sounds that looks like this, and it ends up as like that. No, don't worry about these periods. Let me just get rid of those because they're just getting clumsy. Speaking of clumsy, there we go. And what you will not find under this claim about regularity of sound change is that the sequence AXC will develop into a YC, that is something different from what you see in the first instance. By regularity of sound change, this kind of development is not going to happen. We can rule it out. So if this is the sound change involved here, and you think that there might be reason to posit something like this going on, same environment, same sound as a starting point, but a different outcome, regularity of sound change says no, you won't find that. And that's how we can elevate it to the status of a principle for as a way of governing our reconstructions. Okay, is everyone clear on that? Some of the ways in which you use the term regularity in your write-up of the homework assignment suggested that you didn't quite have as precise a notion of regularity as I'm trying to put before you now. So as we said in that key notions, it's regular in the sense that all candidate forms for a particular change, once it's formulated appropriately, in this case, say what the environment is, between A and C, or between vowels in initial position next to a consonant, whatever, all of the kinds of environments that we've stated so far. Maybe the type of vowel will matter, front vowel versus back vowel, high vowel versus low vowel, nasal versus non-nasal. All of those considerations have to be taken account of. And that's what I mean by saying once it is formulated appropriately to be restricted to a particular environment. So all candidate forms, limited in time and space, it's not a forever thing. It's not an all around the world thing. It's just a particular speech community at a particular point in its historical development. All candidate forms undergo the change. The opposite of question, let's see. Okay. The opposite of regular here. Does anyone know what the opposite is? I know what you're tempted to say. Someone take a guess at what the opposite is. What is sort of the natural thing to think of as the opposite of regular?
Irregular.
Irregular, yes, thank you. You might think that the answer is irregular, but really what we want to say is not irregular, but rather sporadic. Irregular in a certain sense, but we'll see that has other kinds of connotations within linguistics. So what I want you to think of as the opposite of regular sound change would be sporadic sound change. Sometimes it goes here, sometimes it goes there, sometimes this word does it, sometimes that word does it. And that's so keep that in mind. This will come up in other contexts throughout the semester, to be sure. Thank you. The other part of the notion of regular sound change is that once we begin to look at the environments, the only environments that matter are phonetic environments. So it won't be the case that one word will change and a homophone, a word that's pronounced the same but means something different, will behave differently as far as the sounds are concerned. If we're dealing with sound change, the only kinds of conditioning factors will be phonetic in nature. And we'll come back to this, but this is another way in which phonetics matter, in which we want to be so good that it hurts, as it were. Okay, let me go back then to our notes here. So the question is, could we use our dental affricate ts for numbers 10 through 13 here? I know that that's very tiny, but you've all had a chance to look at this. And some of these involve our, like this one here, some of them are indeed dental affricates, but some are the alveopalatal affricate, or I'm sorry, prepalatal affricate is the way it's described here, with that little line underneath it. And I'm sorry it's so small. I could blow it up a little bit. And then maybe that helps a bit. But in 10 through 13, there are some dental affricates and some prepalatal affricates, as well as the dental S's in 3 of the languages. So the question is, could we use the same reasoning and reconstruct ts, the dental affricate for 10 through 13? It's tempting to think of that, because you have, you would think that it would satisfy Occam's razor, because you have a preponderance of dentals. So Occam's razor could give you a reason for saying that we're dealing with a dental sound to start with. But what gets in the way of using ts here for 10 through 13? Bearing in mind that this is all this is all one data set. I divided it up into these 2 different assignments just to make it more manageable, but you were supposed to look at 10 through 13 in combination with what you had reconstructed for 1 through 9 and 18 through 22. So can we indeed use ts for 10 through 13? And the answer is no, unless we want to give up using ts for 18 through 22. And why is that the case? Why is that the case? How would you make the argument that you can't use ts for 10 through 13 unless you give it up, unless you choose something else for 18 through 22? What's the basis for our reasoning there? Anyone?
Regularity, because the phonetic environment for 18 to 22 sets are the same for the 10 to 13.
Yes,
they are
good.
Initial.
They're initial, and you can even get more specific than that. And let's look at number 11 and number 19. Let me go back a bit. Number 11 has our friend the high-toned open O as the environment for this correspondence set, and number 19 has the high-toned open O. So what kind of distribution do we have then between based on 11 and 19? If you had to characterize the distribution, what descriptive term do we use for it?
Complementary.
Ah, okay. So is it complementary? So there, why do you say it's complementary?
Just because they share a distribution, I guess.
Right. So if they share a distribution, if they occur in exactly the same environment, is that what we mean by complementary distribution in linguistics? Clearly, because I'm asking the question in that way, the answer is no. I mean, this is an important term, and this contrasts with the term that I was looking for. Does anyone remember another term that we've used for talking about distributions, especially when the distribution is exactly the same?
Overlap.
Overlapping, right. So when the complementary means completely disjoint, that is not at all, no overlap at all, let me put it that way. Whereas overlapping means, this is a case where that's the real opposite. Overlapping means some environment, some part of the environment is identical. So they overlap in a certain, in at least one environment. I can't do this on my my screen here, but do you know, maybe I can find it online. I should have looked. Let me spend a moment looking now. Do you know from your, oops, nope. What do I want to look at here? Do you remember from math classes from a long time ago, maybe, the notion of Venn diagrams? Yeah, does that look familiar? I don't know. I think I was first exposed to them in maybe 7th grade or something like that. It's just a representation of how sets can overlap or be disjoint from one another. And these would represent this set here, this circle here, this circle here, and this circle here. There are 3 circles populated with different elements. And this point of intersection here is the overlap amongst all 3 of them. This is the overlap for these 2. This is the overlap for these 2. This is the overlap for these 2. If they were completely disjoint, if they were completely disjoint, oh, here, no, I don't see any. These are all overlapping in some form or another. Here we go. This one here, this green one here, is disjoint from these other 2. There's no overlap at all. So this set is complementary with these 2 sets. These 2 overlap, but this one here, the green one, is complementary compared to these others. So when we look at distributions, if you keep these Venn diagrams in mind, then we can make sense of it. If they overlap at all, they're like, you know, they're like this sort of thing. There's some overlap in the set, and that means how does overlap pertain to or relate to regularity of sound change? Could someone explain the connection here? This is important, and these are different. These are concepts that students always get tripped up on. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but I want to make sure everyone understands why overlapping has connects to the notion of regularity of sound change here. If 11 and 19 both have this environment, if they overlap in this environment, what if we tried to use our affricate for both of them? What would that look like? It would mean that sometimes it developed into a ts in one of the languages, and sometimes it developed into T. And can you have it going into 2 different outcomes in exactly the same environment? Can you have this according to the principle of regularity of sound change?
Nope.
No. Why not, Austin? You're shaking your head. You're right. Why not? Can you just verbalize it?
Oh, just because if they're in the same environment, then they should act the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So it would be this. That would be this kind of setup compared to. It would be So it would be like this second diagram compared to this first schema here, and we decided that you can't have that by regularity of sound change. So if you have overlapping distribution, then you can say for certain that that this kind of representation is not going to work. This kind of solution is not going to work. What about if you have complementary, if they're completely disjoint? Then let's just suppose that we had, say, T becoming T in initial position. We don't have, which we do have. We did have actually. Oops, what did I do wrong? There we go. And T becoming D between vowels. Could we derive both of these from, so that we would actually, this would be a correspondence set of T corresponding to T, and this would be a correspondence set of T corresponding to D. If we just state it this way, and let's even put a vowel in here. If we just state it this way, it looks like there's a conflict, that we start with the same sound. And moreover, we say then that this is from T and this is from T. Okay, everyone. So this proto-sound gave rise to this correspondence set. The same proto-sound gave rise to this correspondence set. On the face of it, if this is all we say, this looks like a problem for regularity of sound change. Right? Do you all see that? If we don't say anything, if we don't specify the environment at all, it looks like you're saying the same sound sometimes gives a T in one language and sometimes gives a D in another language, which would be a sporadic development of the sort that regularity of sound change says does not occur. Everyone with me on that? Yeah, okay. If not, raise your hand. These are important concepts, and I want to be sure that everyone we're all on the same page, so to speak. So what if we say, well, actually, what's going on here is that this occurs before vowel, and this occurs before vowel. Would that help matters at all? Why not? Oscar, you're shaking your head. Why not?
The distributions are still not complementary.
Right. Yeah. This is, again, would be a case of overlapping distribution. So you'd have to say, well, maybe it's something different. Maybe this was a D to start with, and that's what gave rise to that. But if you get clever, and this is where I introduced the term the other day of granularity, the granularity of our environments, which has nothing to do with sand in water or anything like that. It has to do with how finely do we determine the environments. And sure, these overlap with regard to vowels, but suppose we then go one step further and say, I've noticed that the T to T correspondence occurs only in initial position, and the T to D correspondence occurs only between vowels. Could this now stand as being consistent with regularity of sound change once we specify? Remember the definition of once you specify the environment. Let me look at that. Once it is formulated appropriately so as to be restricted to a particular environment. Have we restricted it to the in such a way that gives us a complementary distribution when we look at this part here, initially before vowel as opposed to between vowels. Do these overlap as a total environment? Does this initial before vowel overlap with between vowels, the way it's stated here? And the answer is, should we vote on it? Yes or no? By voting no, what do you, I didn't formulate the question appropriately. Are these, do these overlap at all? And the answer is, Austin says no. Anyone else want to vote? Kenneth says no, that's good. So everyone else is abstaining? Or does anyone want to throw their hat into the ring at this point? No, oh, I see more no's, good, good. No, 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 everywhere, excellent. So there is no overlap here. You have to look at the environments in totality, initial position before a vowel versus between vowels. Between vowels really means in the middle of a word, right? So you're talking about initial versus medial, initial versus middle of the word. So that's what allows you to say they're disjoint. And in that case, then you can say the development of T to T occurred in this environment. The development of T to D in this language occurred in this environment between vowels. And therefore, we can preserve regularity of sound change and reconstruct the same proto-language segment for these two different outcomes. So when you inspect the environments, if the totality of the environment in question is disjoint from, that is, it would be two separate circles in the Venn diagram, then you're in a position to say that these are complementary, completely disjoint, and therefore the development of T developments are consistent with regularity of sound change. Now, these notions can be a little bit confusing, and I want to draw your attention to the potential points of confusion. When we say no overlap, notice I've been saying that this environment in its totality, because you could say, well, don't they overlap with regard to the occurrence of a vowel afterwards? And the answer is yes, they do, but what we mean is completely disjoint. And once you specify the environments this way, then these are completely disjoint, even if they show a bit of overlap in one element of the total environment. So, I'm sorry. So the second part here, that we need to keep in mind of potential for confusion is Austin first, when I said, are these complementary, Austin said, well, they share something. So in that sense, they they go together in a certain sense. And we don't want to use complementary in that way. It's not like the color of your shirt is complementary to the color of your socks or something like that. We don't mean it that way. And so that's why I reframed this in terms of completely disjoint. So there, if you think of these notions of complementary versus overlapping in terms of the Venn diagrams, and keep in mind that sometimes you have to be very granular, a high degree of granularity in how you state the environments. That's sort of a necessary methodological step that you take. Okay, so the sound for 10 through 13 can't be T, can't be S, and it can't be a Ts, the dental, unless we want to revise those. So we could go back and sort of redo the whole exercise and say, I think it should be S for this one and T for this one and theta for the other, and then we could use Ts. But we can't use the same symbol again in the same environment unless we give up regularity of sound change. And at this point, we're very early in the game, so we'll stick to regularity of sound change. So what's left then? Well, why not the pre-palatal affricate? And many of you actually came up with that. Some of you, I think, didn't completely appreciate what I meant by integrating your solution for this for 10 through 13 with what you did with 1 through 5, 6 through 9, and 18 through 22. I meant that all of these facts had to be taken together to come up with an overall solution for all of them. So regularity of sound, how does this work in terms of phonetic plausibility? It's not quite as satisfying as the as Ts would be, but Ts is even more satisfying. Let's go back to the Ts is even more satisfying here, where for 18 through 22, where it's dentals everywhere. So Occam's razor tells us that dentals are the right choice. A dental something is the right choice to make here. We look at 10 through 13 and we say, yeah, well, there are a lot of dentals here too. Would Occam's razor steer us in the direction of dentals? Well, except that it would run afoul of regularity of sound change given the distribution, given 11 versus 19. So therefore, we have to come up with something else here. And the high-toned, I'm sorry, here it is, the prepalatal, even occurring before the high-toned O, would be probably the best reconstruction that you could come up with at that point. Okay, any questions on any of this? Is it making sense? You probably, if you did any phonemics exercises in your other linguistics classes, then if you did any phonemic analysis in your other linguistics classes, you would have run into this same kind of methodology of looking at complementary distribution and overlapping distribution. So it's just like it is just like phonemic analysis, where but the units that we are playing with in our phonemic analysis are not individual sounds, but rather correspondence sets. It's like phonemic analysis done on correspondence sets. So with regard to, skip this one. We will get back to that eventually, to Polynesian, but we're going to run out of time, unfortunately, today, right now. So so what about 14 through 17? On the face of it, we again see that these are similar looking. Let me blow this up a bit more. There are similar looking elements involved, the dental affricate, the prepalatal affricate, but we have prepalatals predominating, actually. And so Occam's razor might tell you want to think about a prepalatal here. But we already use the prepalatal here for 10 through 13. So the same kind of reasoning, depending on what the environments are, the same kind of reasoning needs to be invoked here. And what does the environment tell us? What does number 14 in particular tell us compared with number 11?
It's the same environment?
Yeah, same environment. It's again our friend the high-toned open O. So we're in exactly the same situation with regard to 14 through 17 as we were with 10 through 13. We cannot use the sound that we might think of as the most natural, phonetically plausible starting point. So you have to then be creative. And some of you said, well, I don't like the idea of just sort of plucking a sound out of thin air and using it. But you either believe in regularity of sound change and you believe in your methods and you follow them where they lead you, or you just give up on the enterprise altogether. And what I'm trying to get you to appreciate is the importance of believing in the methods that we're developing. So it turns out that there's actually a somewhat clever way of dealing with 14 through 17 that makes them complementary with 10 through 13, but we don't have time for that today. I will leave that as sort of something to tantalize you with. So we'll end class now. For Wednesday, please do homework number 7. It's the German problem. It's really quite straightforward. All you have to do is just state what the correspondences are. Don't reconstruct anything. Just state what the correspondences and what the environments are. You can think about going beyond that if you want, and that's what homework number 8 involves. But all I want you to do for Wednesday is focus on stating the correspondences and stating the environments. Okay? If you do anything more, I'm going to give you a 0. I'm going to be really tough about this. If you do anything more than that, I'm going to, in terms of what you turn in, you can write it on your hand. You can write it on a piece of paper and put it in your desk or something like that. I won't know about that. But in terms of what you turn in, I just want the correspondence sets and the environments. Okay, are we all agreed on that? All right. And then on Wednesday, I will we will sort of push further this question of complementary distribution versus overlapping distribution. We'll go back to the Polynesian problem because there's an issue there, and we will build on we'll take the notion of regularity of sound change and build on it further also. So all of this is coming up. This is really exciting stuff, I promise you. Okay, have a good day. Don't you have 15 minutes that you didn't think you had before, so don't waste them. Use them to good advantage. And I will see you on Wednesday then. Okay, so long, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.